This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, and today we have a little bit of an unusual guest. He has been a manager, announcer, and commentator in the wrestling business, but he's best known for his TV performances and work as one of the top stand-up comedians in Canada. He is from, I guess you could say, one of the Mecca cities in Canada for wrestling. Winnipeg, Manitoba, same hometown as Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, Don Callis, if you want to count him to a lower level. But Jimmy Mack, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and yeah, let's not talk about the Jackal. Let's not talk about the
I
Jackal.
don't like him either. From the few, he's a great politician, I guess. But
Yeah,
from what I understand, when he actually tried to run his own company, it didn't even last a year.
yeah. I again, those are probably my touring days, like doing more stand up at the time. So I'm on the road 11 weeks at a time, and I do know that there was. I think the promotion you're talking about was it dealt with NHB wrestling, was no holds barred wrestling, and when I would come back to the city. I did have the opportunity a couple times to get in the ring and either be the ring. And I was the ring announcer for them at the time. So when I would be back in town, it was fun. I mean, it's a fun business, as you know. I enjoy watching your show. I was laughing. Actually, today I'm on the treadmill because that's all I could really do. You're in the same predicament with the no gym
Oh
thing.
yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I almost went off the treadmill about the guy down the staircase when you were bouncing. So
Oh,
it's all good, man. So yeah, I just thought it was a great way. You have all these unique guests, and I appreciate you bringing a different thing. Like I'm sure you've run into Bischoff in your times.
yeah.
Uh, I don't know good, bad, but anything that I'm going to tell you today or that you ask me about any wrestler, there's no negativity. But as for
Yeah.
Don is Don.
Not always fun on the promoting side. It can be very stressful, but for the wrestling side, for the most part, yeah, we do it for fun, especially on the independent level, as you know.
Oh yeah, you have to. I mean, and can I go back to an interview that you did earlier? And
Sure.
you spoke about the small promotions and how that they can be more popular than the main promotions because you coming back, let's say Hannibal, right? So you have one name. Like little kids are like, oh my god, he's only got one name. Like his parents didn't even know what else to call him, right? So you establish those great characters with certain small towns. Like if you're in Ontario and you head to, let's say, a suburb like Oshawa, I mean, every time you go back there, all you have to do, as you know, is say one thing to one audience member. They'll either love you or hate you, but they're coming back next time and they're bringing their buddies. And you do establish that. And it's a hard goal for, some establishments or some promotions. Like you walk in there and the guy goes, well, here's your $25 for the night. I'm like, okay, yeah. Yeah, I'll buy you a new chair for what you hit me with, right? So,
Yeah. The other thing on the indie levels is a lot of the time, sometimes you break the chairs in the buildings, and they actually charge you for them,
yeah, yeah.
as
So
some of the other wrestlers do.
yeah, you gotta actually establish when you make the call. Say if you have a busted chair or table lying around, leave it for us.
Yeah.
Throwing it out.
I remember actually when I put Senator Patrick Brazo through a table, the arena people had actually given me that table, but because the news had picked up on the story that like someone higher up in the city actually contacted me and they wanted like $250 for a table because I guess they bought into that they thought it was real for whatever reason. So they didn't realize that no, I had gone through the proper channels and it was an old table, and eventually we got it sorted out.
Listen,
But
I'll make you a deal. If you're ever in Winnipeg, I'll give you $250 to slam a few of our politicians through a table.
well, how did you get into wrestling? I understand you're a big fan in the 80s when the AWA would come down to Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg might have been the only city in Canada that AWA ever came to. Maybe some smaller towns around Winnipeg, but mainly. Sorry, man.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am. Maybe I'm a little intimidated by you because I never interviewed a comedian before.
That's all
But
good. That's all.
mainly Winnipeg.
Yeah, I think you're correct because they used to pop up obviously from the Minnesota side and the Minneapolis side and hop up here, but those were for sure. As a matter of fact, I think my earliest recollection of why I got interested in wrestling, and I actually went to my folks' place to try to dig through some old things to find a few pictures I had from the local wrestling that was here, and it was definitely a guy with. We just had a McAfee scan come up here, but apparently we have a coronavirus. What is going on here?
I'll turn it off.
Oh, I said, here comes that fucking guy. He's gonna work. I'm not a computer guy. Can you still see me though? Or?
Oh yeah, and I can
Okay.
also see your friend's wonderful hair.
Oh yeah. Between the two of us, we might have a full head.
I hear in Winnipeg, I've only driven through it, but I hear it's like they're still stuck in the 80s in a lot of ways. Like 80s style is still acceptable in Winnipeg. Is that true?
Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. The other day, there is on our radio station, believe it or not, they were having how to cut the proper mullet. Just saying. That's that's all I can actually tell you is that that's okay. I don't have to see you. I'm assuming as long as you.
Let's just take a quick break here.
Oh, my
Oh sure.
Yes, you thought I was fired.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Get the edit.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I can cut that part out. But we can see you fine. There was no interruption on our end.
Don't touch.
There we go. I just want to get to that little X. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, there we go. We're back.
All right. Continue on.
Yeah. All right, I think we're okay now.
So you were talking about seeing AWA in the 80s there. I think Hulk Hogan even came up there in the 80s when he was with AWA.
I'm going to be honest. I don't even think I remember seeing the Hulkster when he was in AWA because it was sort of not that my family wasn't like wealthy or whatever, but you had to pick and choose when you went, right? Dad wants to take you here or there. He takes you to the local community centers. I believe I saw wrestler Dr. X. That's what got me right there. And the first thing I remember falling in love with wrestling was the term "he's parts unknown." And I was told, like, how scary can you be when you don't even know where the fuck this dude's from? And that sold me right there. So when AWA would come through, my dad also loved the wrestling. He was all about Jesse Ventura and Adrian Adonis. So the East-West connection, they were my favorites to see out here. And so, yeah, whenever we knew Jesse was rolling in, we were at the matches.
Yeah, he's probably my favorite commentator. I know I'll get heat for that because everyone says Gordon Soley or Jim Ross, but I loved hearing Jesse Ventura on the mic.
Yeah, he always had a way, this is my opinion of him, that no matter who was in the ring, if they needed heat, Jesse would give it to him. Like, for some reason, he had that magic, no matter who he was talking about or to turn them heel. I think I kind of look back, and if you remember, even Honky Tonk coming in, nobody was buying the honky bit. And then all of a sudden, Jesse Ventura sort of took over as, I don't think they ever made him as his manager or anything, but I remember as soon as Jesse came in saying he's the next thing, it's Elvis garbage, blah, this is the guy, Honky got heat and instant heel. So he was magic.
It's amazing to think that they actually brought Honky in as a baby face, but many people forget that.
Yeah.
Now, I understand now you'd be considered big for a wrestler at 5'9", but back in those days, they wanted the larger-than-life character. So although you were a fan, you wanted to be a wrestler, you ended up going into stunt work, I guess, because of your size at the time.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, my tryout in the first time, I did have a tryout with the WWF in the early 80s as a midget, but I was just a little taller than I should have been, so I couldn't do it. No. It's a joke. Get it with it. Yeah, you're right. I always wanted to be. And then the stunt work came when I got, again, back into wrestling. I always wanted to learn from the guys how to take a bump. Right? I loved stunt work. I loved stuntman. I practiced my own kind of stunts, falling off different things. And when I got to TV, I think you might have seen a few clips of some of the sillier things that, when we get thrown around, going to commercial, they call them a bumper. So whenever I had a chance to do a stunt or whatever, people took it into the fact like, holy crap, he just got knocked off a platform or whatever. But wrestling, again, bringing wrestling into my world and into the TV world, it was a great way to do it because of the wrestling business. Taught me how to do certain falls and not get hurt, and people loved it. It got to the point, Hannibal, that we would do when I would book a show, and just like yourself with the table, I would phone and say to people, if you have something broken, just leave it aside because I can wreck it even further. But I remember booking one show with an antique place, and I phoned them up and I said, hey, we want to do the show to, next week or whatever. And the guy said, no. And I said, well, you don't want free advertising? It's like $5,000 to free advertising for us to be there in the morning. He goes, listen, I've seen you on the show. You fucking break everything. He goes, this is an antique shop. I can't have you here. So he didn't even let us explain that it's a bit, right? That's how well we would do certain stunts. So, and whenever I had a chance in TV world to bring wrestlers in, you bet your ass that I was doing a show with the guys.
And I understand at one point you got into comedy after hanging out with the Hells Angels. How is that possible?
Well, yeah. So
they don't seem like very funny people when I've had interactions with them at the bars over the years.
Listen, they're people too. They're just like us. They got their own senses of humor. And if you can connect, again, I try to connect with everybody, right? So I'm working for the city of Winnipeg at the time, and we're just, in a field somewhere, and nobody would talk to. They weren't necessarily HA members. They were affiliate guys who knew them all.
Okay.
Right. So what happened was nobody would talk to them, and I overheard them talking one day about the movie Scarface. So I'm like, I remember going back, and my girlfriend at the time, I said, have you ever seen Scarface? And she said, yeah, it's a pretty long show. You've never seen it? And I guess let's watch it. So we watched it. So the next day, when I went back to work, of course, to get in with the biker guys, I went over there and started doing hey, what the fuck you guys doing? What the fuck? You want to do something? And I had some fun with them as Scarface and made a connection. And then they used to, my nickname became Montana after that. But before then, they always called me Randy. So I would always have a bandana and a beard going. So, of course, well, hey, if I'm Randy, oh, yeah, we got to do the Randy Savage form, So now I just started doing all the impressions, having fun with these guys. And I'm driving to work one day in my brand new Hyundai Pony. Surprised it got there. But I hear on the radio, and coming up next week on Tuesday morning, it's our comedy contest. And we have two people competing that morning. And it's blank, 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 and Jimmy Mack. I'm like, did he just say my name on the radio for a comedy contest? So I get to work, and I remember walking in going, okay, which one of you put me in a comedy contest? And they kind of give you that look like, what, you're not going? I'm like, okay, well, if you guys say so and the rest of the members say so, I guess I'm going. So I won, which was my chance to get on stage after that. And I used to wander on stage as Randy Savage to start the show and have a bit of a bit going with that and sort of piqued some interest. And from there, it sort of became my finisher. My finishing move at the end was Randy Savage at the end of my show. By the twilight of my career, let's say, 10 years in, you got to, like in my comics episode, I'm not sure if you saw any bits and pieces of that, as the Randy Savage character. And I was fortunate enough as the Randy Savage character to be part of a bodybuilding show here in, I believe it was 1992. And so I did my show and dressed as Savage sort of at the end of it, took a picture, and it ended up in the World Bodybuilding Federation magazine, which I believe you have that photo as well that we got a sense of promo.
We'll throw it up on the screen.
Yeah, with Troy Zucolato. So from that magazine was an opportunity. Now, I don't know how my agent at the time, they got a hold of him to talk to me, fly to New York, to head out to Stamford, Connecticut, and be part of a gym opening as the Savage character for Wrestling Federation at the time, which was it was quite the. I mean, it's not like, I mean, they kind of knew that it wasn't Randy Savage walking in, but you walk in, you shake some hands and have some fun. I'm assuming more at the time. I think more wrestlers probably do promotional appearances now than they did then. Like they were probably more when you're on the card, it's a meet and greet than a gym promotion or whatever it may be. But so it got me that. So that was pretty cool to do that for the McMahons at the time.
If I were to ask Randy if the rumors are true that he slept with Stephanie McMahon, what would he say?
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. Let me try this again. Oh, yeah, definitely. 1, 2, 3 on Stephanie. Yeah, dig it. All right.
And speaking of the McMahon children, I guess Shane McMahon was your driver for that WBF.
Actually, not for WBF, no, that because he was here. But when we went to Stamford and we're at the events, it was actually he wasn't the driver, but he was our, I guess for lack of a better term, he was the gopher for the guys.
Okay.
So Tom Platz was the big bodybuilder at the time. Lex Luger was their star they were pushing in the bodybuilding side. And Shane would, if you need a water, you need whatever, they would be like, hey, Shane, can you get us a water? He was the guy running around at the time. And I remember asking, saying, wait a minute, that's Vince McMahon's kid? And they said, hey, Vince is pretty adamant that, Shane knows how to set up a ring. He swept the gym. He cleans he does everything. Vince is making him work all the way up. So I think, like, again, Shane probably wouldn't remember me from that many years ago, but anybody who even now will say, oh, Shane McMahon he must be pretty lucky given everything he's got. And I always turn around and say, listen, I can say that he's worked from that bottom up to get the life he's got. Like, so Vince must be a pretty tough pop.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Now I forget exactly what he makes, but he makes in the millions a year now.
Yeah, I think I saw something like that too, like 1.8 or 1.2.
Yeah, it was released not too long ago, and so he's doing pretty well for himself. I guess there was another situation that happened in Winnipeg where WWE refused to let you meet Randy Savage or something, or the local promoter representing WWE.
This did happen. So I had asked the person at the time, if I could meet Savage, because I was at the comedy club and I was sort of getting a good reputation as this Savage impersonator. And and he was coming to town. Of course, I love the guy. I love Savage. So, yeah, of course I want to meet him. And so they came back and said, you know what, we've asked everybody, you can't meet Savage. But I was going to the card anyway. And a buddy of mine said, just take your outfit anyway. Like, take your gimmick. You never know. So I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I throw it in the car. And as I'm there, it just so happens maybe 3-4 years earlier from the radio contest that I won was the DJ. And he said, hey, Jimmy, what are you doing here? I said, I was just coming to see if I could meet Savage. He goes, well, we have a meet and greet with our station. I'll take you in. He says, do you have your costume? And I go, of course. So he got me back there. And he talked to, was it Renee? Rene Goulet, yeah. Sorry, that's why you're
the guy that had the mushroom cut, I guess, in the old days.
And he looks at me. He goes, "You do a Savage impression?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I got a whole costume." He goes, "You got a jacket and everything?" I said, "Sure." He says, "Well, you go get it." He goes, "Because Vince is adamant that if there's people that do a gimmick with our wrestlers, we want that good promotion and that good PR." So he apparently there was a little bit of heat for a little while that. The promoter didn't actually ask Goulet anything when it came back. He said, no one asked me. He said, I would have had you here for sure.
Who was the promoter? Do you remember the name?
I'll leave that out. He's still friends on Facebook.
So Savage was impressed, I take it.
He was. He loved he had this little meet and greet. And he got up from this little table and he was about to leave. And Goulet said, hold on. And I was kind of behind this little curtain area. And then he kind of waved me through. And I came out and did the gimmick with the jacket and the fringes. And Savage starts laughing about it. And I still have the shirt. He signed the shirt on the back of my shirt for me that day. And all he ever said, like, he loved the gimmick. And he said to me, this is what you, I'm sure you've had idols. And if an idol says something to you or you become a friend of that idol, you're just taken aback by him knowing who you were, perhaps. And Randy says to me, he goes, wait a minute, you're the guy from the magazine. So I'm like, what? And they were reading it. He goes, yeah, we were reading it in the limo the other day. So he knew about the stand-up show. And all he ever said to me, and he got a little bit serious at the time. And he goes, just do me one favor. Never swear when you're doing us. So I'm like, to me, that's a torch passed right there. Like when you say, he established that he was the character. I don't swear in front of kids, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't either. And to this day, like in any setting, if there was kids around when I was doing that impression, I mean, I'd never swear. That was just for Randy's rules, and that was it.
What's your favorite line from a Macho Man promo? He's obviously one of the greatest promos of all time.
Oh man, like the cream of the crop always kills me. When he had the little creamers yet, when he did the cream of the crop, I'm just always about the oh yeah and the diggits. Like there's no necessarily anything that necessarily stands out to me. If you got the inflection in the voice, if you got where's the glasses again? Like if you had the pinky up and the quick turns and all that, and the inflections in the voice and some of his mannerisms, to me that was what I loved watching for. Like the Hogan handshake, he would come in with the big handshake, right? Like he was always, everything was over the top with Randy. So to me, there's no promo that I would say that's the one for me. I could watch over and over because I can almost watch any promo over and over. Same as Hogan to me. I could watch any Hogan promo over again. What about you?
Let's hear your Hogan.
Hey?
Let's hear your Hogan promo.
Do I get paid for this, Hayden? Fucking guy. No, I'm just kidding.
You might get some more followers out of it.
Oh, great. I set my Twitter account 2 months ago. So let's see if I can get into some Hogan here. Well, you know something, Hulkamaniacs. Everybody's sitting here watching the Hannibal TV, brother. I'm not talking just Hannibal here. The Hannibal. So what's she gonna do when the largest arms in YouTube run wild on you? That's
not bad. What about the Warrior? He's probably one of the most popular subjects on here.
You know what? Fuck the Warrior. I personally, I've never. Well, if I can get Hannibal laughing, I'm doing okay. I was never a fan of the Warrior. I thought his promos sucked. I just never got him. I never got into him. I just never enjoyed him. To me, my own personal opinion, I don't know if this is anything that would be your opinion on him. I just think they needed to push him because who else was going to take the belt from Hogan? Like, to me, we need a new baby face. If Hogan wants to go do another movie or something like that, who do we give it to? And I just think that they gave it to the Warrior. He just had that, like you said, that physique. He's got the big look. He was colorful. The kids like him. And he's a little bit larger, I think, than Savage was, right? So who do you give it to? Give it to a guy, a deranged lunatic who bangs the ropes around, I guess. I don't know. I just wasn't a fan, and his promos were dull, and they went forever for nothing. They got nowhere.
Now, can you do a Vince McMahon?
No, I don't do a Vince.
Okay.
No.
So I guess you got into radio later on, and you were doing that because you kind of got the urge to be a WWE announcer after having a little taste of WWE.
Yeah, so radio sort of became. This is all like so. Joe, who was the guy at the time, he sort of brought me in to do some secondary character work, right? So we would have Randy Savage call in or Hogan call in and have some fun on the radio show. So I became the character guy on the particular show while still establishing stand-up here in the city. So it was sort of a part-time afternoon gig that I would go to and do that. And of course, yeah, Joe had the connection from when he had a quick stint as an announcer in WWF. So yeah, he would bring me along and do the fun stuff. Of course, we would do a live promotion from the hotel where the wrestlers would be, and sort of that was my reward for being on the show, was that I'd get to meet all the wrestlers and get into that too. So, and again, you kind of hone your skills as an announcer to on air. You learn how to sell without anything, basically anybody watching you, right? You just sell with your voice, and sort of, to me, every radio break was cutting a promo. Like, although I would do it with characters, so that's where I loved it. Like, theater of the mind, right? If you can create that theater before you get to the theater, you're going to win that game.
And I guess your Al Pacino character got over there. I guess it was Manny Montoya.
Yeah, Manny Montoya was actually, I might say this is a little gimmick infringement going on here, because I was way before Razor. Okay, I'm just saying. So we had Manny Montoya. Of course, how do you bring a drug lord into radio and create a fun thing with him? So Manny's character, he would play. Now this is back in '90. I mean, now you can get away with almost anything you want on the radio, saying anything you want. But back then, we actually had to be creative how we got things across. So I would say, like my on-air partner would say, "Oh, Manny, you're here in the studio. What were you doing earlier today?" "Well, I was over at the the post office. I was getting my shipment ready to come in." And he'd be like, hey, you can't talk about that on air. I'm like, "What? Apples? I'm from BC, Columbia." Right? So we'd play that Columbia, BC, like bringing in a shipment of apples, but people knew. Like, we just had to be creative with them. And Manny actually became quite popular in the city back in the day. Like, Manny, that was his big. I'd have our morning show ask me to come and do phone-ins as Manny. So he was a walk the edge character, kind of like you're saying, the Scarface character / miniature version of Razor Ramon.
And I guess from there, around that time, that's when you started working for Tony Condello. We're mostly popular in the States on this channel. For anyone that doesn't know who he is, he's a wrestling promoter, right?
Yeah.
In the Winnipeg area, long time, very well known around there.
So I was with, Tony was, I'd sort of, if Tony needed me, I would still be part of that wrestling at the time. But Tony wasn't. There was a lot of that, like we talked about with Don's, like the no holds barred. That was, Tony was still part of that, and he was always good friends with Don at the time, and I'm sure they're still all friends. But so yeah, that would be the ring announcer when they needed the ring announcer. Lenny or Dr. Luther was earlier in, like, say, 90s, 91, 92, maybe, before he went back to Japan.
And now he's in AEW. I guess he got that job. He's well deserving of it, finally, after all these years, to get a U.S. wrestling contract. But he was good buddies with Jericho, and you managed him at that time. Any stories about him?
Me a favor, hey, Hannibal?
Does he? Yeah, I guess he does. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he owes me one, so I have to get into AEW soon. But he was, when he came in, and I mean, now he's cutting promos, but at the time, he was really that deranged lunatic, for lack of better character. I mean, like Hannibal Lecter, we rolled him out on the dolly, and I was the guy controlling him. And so, yeah, I would be the guy who would, like my Mad Max character, again, bringing Randy Savage to life. I had fringes on my jacket with this big, like, biker hat and all that stuff. But so when I guess for lack of a better term, I was like his kimchi, right? I was his handler. So I had this can of like this aerosol can or whatever. And if he got out of hand, you had to spray him to knock him out. Right. And again, this is my favorite part about wrestling. If you can suspend everybody's reality for a little while and bring in the fact that for some unknown reason, I could have that same spray can here and knock Hannibal out, or pardon me, not Hannibal, Dr. Luther out, but you, Hannibal, are fine. I'm fine. The fucking guy over there is fine, and the audience is fine, but it only knocks Luther out. So to me, that's the magic of what wrestling does for people, right? Like and everybody plays that part. Oh my God, he's on the loose. So hold on, he's out. Right? Like,
did it have like a potpourri smell to it?
Yeah, it was just hairspray. All we did was we just put hockey tape over the hairspray. It was just a black can. We just shot him with it. So it was at the time.
And I guess during that run with Luther, Adam Impact came in, who was later known as Edge.
Yes. So here's a funny story on. He was always. I'm not sure, like, if you met him and talked with him and dealt with him. Like, to me, the two times that I've been around him, and we did one show at an arena and another one in just a community club. He was always a great person. Like, he was always really nice. And sometimes when you have somebody green coming in, there's not a lot of patience, especially for just some jabroni coming in to be like Luther's handler. So Luther has Copeland over the ropes in the middle of the rope, and Luther yells at me, "Hit him!" And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, "Uh-oh, like, I don't know how to hit." Like, so and what are you gonna do, right? I mean, the crowd's yelling, "Hit him!" Right? This little small town again, right? So sure enough, I haul off and I crack him in the face, and he says, "Hit him again." So I whack him again. Later on, back in the dressing room, Copeland comes over. He goes, "Hey, who taught you how to hit?" And I said, "Well, nobody. I mean," and I'm not panicked, right? I think I'm gonna get a thumping here. And he turns his face and he goes, "Thanks for the handprint." So he made me hit him about 4 or 5 more times, so I don't hurt anybody. And I thought, you know what? That's magic right there. Like, that, to me, that was a great show of, like, he's respecting the fact that, you know what, you did a good job, but just in case Lenny asked you to smack a few other guys around, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
So,
and I know some wrestlers that would have taken the other route and found a way within that match to get their hands back on you and give you a receipt. So I guess consider yourself lucky it was Edge.
Don't forget, I had the spray. I'll knock them out.
Oh, yeah, the spray. Now, I guess somewhere around this time is when you met Scott Hall.
Okay, so Scott, he phoned in our radio show, and of course, we brief him really quickly before they're coming to Winnipeg that, I'm a character. We play this Manny Montoya character. It's a Scarface thing. Blah. And Scott's on the phone, and he's like, "Okay, no problem, blah, blah, blah." So when he finally, and he played right with it, like, he was great with it, right? So when he came to Winnipeg, we're at the hotel that they're at the time. I think it was a Polo Park Inn, I think we were at. And we're doing our radio show from there. And, of course, my partner says, "Oh, well, we got Razor Ramon coming up right now. Have a seat." He always played the ring, obviously the wrestling announcer voice coming, right? As soon as the wrestlers were in, Joe turned it on too, right? "Razor Ramon, have a seat. Good to have you here." And he'd be like, "Manny, who is this guy, man? I don't want to talk to him." He'd play right with it. And he just, for some reason, took a shining to me, right? And whenever, Joe would try to butt in, he would say, "Razor, your opponent tonight is," it could have been IRS at the time. "Your opponent tonight is IRS. Do you have anything to say about that?" And he'd look at me. He's going, "Hey, Chico, what's he asking me?" And I would have to be like, "Hey, he's just asking, what are you going to do to the tax man?" Right? And so Scott would do the interview with Manny. And it just became like this odd friendship. He's like, "Hey, whenever I'm in town, stop by and say hi. We're always here at the Pole Park Inn or whatever it is." And we took a few photos that night. And we just sort of kept in contact. And, like, when he came back to the city, dropped off some photos. And I think what we're going to run into next is your Sid story that you're looking forward to. Now, I apologize.
Sid, who I actually like Sid a lot, but I guess you had a different interaction with him.
Well, so many. Well, obviously you know this. I think you come. I could be totally wrong, but the sense I get from you is you kind of missed the kayfabe era. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. so do I. Like, and I love that because that's the mystery, right? That's the belief that kids had that it was real. So, and even adults. I mean, you get 7 beer into a Winnipegger. I mean, he's real, right? So I go to meet Scott at the time. I have photos because he said bring the pictures that we took for Manny whenever you're back in the city, and so they're all there. The restaurant is roped off. I asked the server. I said I see Scott's back to me at the time, and I said, can you just go give these to that guy there? It's Razor Ramon. It's an envelope with my business card. And he turns around and he's like, Manny, come in here, man. You know, so it's okay, right? Now we're okay. So I go sit down. Scott sits beside me, and I got Scott on one side. I got $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase on one side. I think for some reason I want to say Hakushi, but who really cared that he was there? And there's a couple other characters that one of the Islanders at the time. And so we're all sitting around chatting, and of course DiBiase's like, hey Scott, who is this guy? Or hey Razor, who is this guy? They're still playing. And he says, oh, he's the radio guy, Manny Montoya, blah, does a bunch of impressions. So of course, just like you did to me, DiBiase's like, oh well, give us a little Hogan or give us a little this, that, and the Undertaker thing, and whatever we do, fine. So Scott, he says, oh, move over, like he says, hey, shove over, man. So DiBiase shoves over, and Sid walks in. Now, you're a big guy. You're in the 6'5" range, aren't you? Somewhere in there, 6'5"-ish?
Yeah, 6'4", but yeah.
So, well, I'm talking lifts. So 6'5", build height.
Yeah, with wrestling boots, that would be legit. That would be accurate, yeah.
Build height, 6'5". So Sid comes in. Now at 5'9", Sid the room disappears, right? And he's standing there, and he's got that, he's always got that look. And it's all quiet. And then he kind of sits down with his plate of food because, they're on their own, and he's eating. And I'm chatting with everybody, kind of having a good time. And all of a sudden he slams his fist down, his hand on the table, and he's like, somebody better tell me who the fruitcake at the table is. And it's quiet. So again, I'm trying to joke around. I'm like, I think I got this one, guys. Let me take Sid. I am Jimmy Mack. I extend my hand. Of course, nothing. Right? He says, I don't think I asked you. Somebody tell me who the fruitcake is. So I'm all quiet. So now Scott, he doesn't necessarily break. Like he's still kind of in that. He always has that Razor accent, but not. Right? He's like, hey, man, take it easy, man. He's my buddy from, blah, blah, blah. And Sid's like, I don't care. Someone better tell me why the fruitcake, who doesn't even know anybody here, is sitting at our table. And I'm like, and so now DiBiase says, give him an Undertaker or something. So I give him a little Undertaker, give him a little Hogan, give him a little Savage. Stone face. So as he says, so Scott, I'll never forget this. He goes, hey, Sid, just go easy, man. He goes, go get some dessert, put it straight to your delts, come back, sit down, and be relaxed. Don't ask me why. I always remember everything went to Sid's delts. So Sid says, by the time I get back, you better be gone, fruitcake. So, oh, great. Now what? So Scott turns to me, and he goes, why aren't you ripping him apart, Mr. Comedian? I'm like, are you going to back me up? He's like, no, you're on your own. I'm like, fuck, man, I ain't going to do nothing. So Sid comes back, takes one bite of his whatever dessert at the time, and he's like, that's it. I'm going to kill this fruitcake. And I'm like, hey, you want to kill me? And whatever tangent I went, I basically cut a promo on Sid. And then he goes, relax, man. He goes, nice to meet you. I'm Sid. He goes, fuck, was that funny? The Undertaker thing was great and blah, blah, blah. Then all the guys start laughing, right? I'm like, you fucker. Like, he just totally roped me in, Like, to me, it's like being well, God forbid we use the term hazing nowadays. But as you know, in dressing room, things happen. And I think he accepted me, at the time. Like, it was just a quick rib. Who is this fucking guy? Blah, blah, blah. So, Sid was great. And I'd met him like maybe another time that he'd come back to Winnipeg. I saw him at the bar, and we had a good laugh again about that, the fruitcake thing. So he was pretty good with it. And going back to the only guy that I never talked to that day that at the time that I enjoyed was Bret Hart. So I'm sitting with all the guys, and Hart comes in, and Hart goes to sit, sort of, because the restaurant's completely shut only to the wrestlers. And Hart goes to sit down, and he sees me, and he walks away and goes and sits on his own. And then I can't remember who else walked in and went and sat with Bret Hart. And I sort of jokingly said to the guys, I goes, "Is something we said?" And Sid turned to me and he goes, "He's just playing, man. He's just playing." He goes, "Don't forget, he and I are fighting tonight." Right. So again, Hart, not knowing me, going back to the kayfabe, he wouldn't allow the fact that he would sit with Sid. And I thought that was fantastic.
How did you end up at Scott Hall's house?
Well, I don't think he knew, but it all goes back to we would always try to coordinate. So if he was in Vancouver, let's say, and I was performing my stand-up in Vancouver, he would always he'd leave tickets to go to the show. And if I was off that particular, usually Thursday nights, the comedy wasn't on. It was like Friday, Saturday sort of thing. So Thursday wrestling comes to town, I would get tickets to go. So I was trying to coordinate. He was like, "Yeah, man, just come anytime. Like, we'll just, if I'm there, just fine, come for a visit." So it was sort of I had to plan my time off to just finally say, okay, go. Scott and I had a relation where he wanted me to put Razor Ramon in his show. Or in my show, pardon me. So, I mean, he sent me vests, I got 3 or 4 or 5 different vests that when he wore his razor to be part of the stand-up show. And he just said, "Yeah, whenever you're in Florida, come out, man." So I coordinated when he was going to be off. And the day before I flew out, I guess somebody had got hurt and he didn't go back to Florida. He was coming back almost the 2 days after I had left, but I'd already booked the flight. Now, this is back in the day where changing a flight was probably more expensive than the actual flight itself. Yeah. So his wife at the time said, "Well, you can just come out and hang out here, and if you're coming to Florida, you could." I had another buddy of mine who lived in Miami, so I visited him first. And I figured, and like Dana at the time, I mean, they would send Christmas cards of him and the kids and the wife. So, I mean, I got to know Dana. I got to know the kids a bit. And that's how I ended up at his house. And I only stayed the first night because I felt uncomfortable. Like he's not there. It just didn't seem right. Like I just stayed the first. I got there late, landed, crashed out, and the next day hit the hotel kind of thing. But it was kind of like his wife was so much. She was a great tour guide for me. We went to Disneyland with the kids, of course. And I actually was out in front, and he'll never remember this because he might have been maybe 9 or 10 at the time. But Cody Hall, I taught him how to skate in his front yard, like on their street. Like none of the kids knew how to skate like a Canadian. So here I am. I went and bought rollerblades. We went to the Walmart, bought rollerblades, and we had a little roller hockey game in the front of their house with a couple other kids.
Very interesting. And I guess later on, you did a CBC Comedy Special with WWE Wrestlers as well.
Yeah, to me, this is, I would say to this day, my proudest moment to bring wrestling into my love, where I had creative control. They said we have a, your stand-up show, and then they would do like a B roll, like a B act. And, what do you want to do in your B act? And I said, well, why don't we promote, like, because I do wrestling show in my stand-up, why don't we promote not everybody can be a wrestler, AKA like me, that it's real and you can get hurt. Like, this is almost pre WWE's days of don't try this at home. It's okay to roller skate, but not this, sort of. So I wanted to promote the fact that you can love this sport, but you got to know what you're doing to be in this sport. So we had to write this little script, send it to the WWE, and they had to approve it. That, yeah, okay, we could do that. And then we were going to use a local promotion for the wrestlers, but we wanted to sort of, because WWE was in town or coming to town, so we were going to try to coordinate my comedy special with that. We had no idea we would actually get wrestlers to be in the CBC show, and it came back that they were the ones who said, "Well, who do you want? What? You're giving us the wrestlers to kick the shit out of me for the show?" So they said, "Yeah, just give us a list. Here's the card." And we gave them a list, and they came back with they liked the idea. They said,
"Was Hakushi your top pick?"
Yeah, he was. I think he was the first strike on the list, but yeah, he was definitely. If we had a C roll, he was in for sure.
Okay.
Not the B roll. So we have I requested Undertaker, and because I had met him years ago earlier too, and there was injuries. So that particular night, we ended up with Mankind or Foley, who was fantastic with my shooting crew. He just hung out all night. My dad, who worked in the magazine business at the time, sent us he sent me to this thing with like 35 different wrestling magazines for the guys. So Foley stayed and read wrestling magazines half the night. We had Paul Bearer. Because of an injury, Undertaker had to fight Stone Cold that night. So I couldn't have Taker, but Paul Bearer came in. Ahmed Johnson was a great guy. And then because Undertaker wasn't there, we had to get somebody else on the list. Now, Hakushi wasn't available. So they have a list of whoever's left. And I said, I think I'm missing someone for my show. But anyway, I look on the list. And I see Sid. So I said, I want Sid. I need Sid, right? So this is great. My producer wanders off with a WWE person at the time, official at the time. And we're sitting there and it's quiet. And it's just me and about 3 other producers sitting in the room. I'm already gimmicked up because every skit that went past of me was a new injury from these wrestlers. Like throughout my B-roll, I would have a neck brace. The next one, I'd have an arm sling. The next one, my leg, just to prove that you will get hurt in this business. So I'm waiting. And all of a sudden, I hear a commotion. And then it gets louder. And it's Sid coming down the hallway in the Toronto, I think it was the Air Canada Center. He's walking underneath or where. And he's just swearing up a storm. And my other producers look at me and go, "This can't be good." And I can hear him. He's getting close. He's like, he's with the WWF official or WWE official, and he's yelling, "I don't give a shit who this guy is. I'm gonna fucking tear him apart." He goes, "Who does this guy think he is that he can come into our business, think this is funny to promote the fact that he goes, I'm gonna hurt him. You want me to be in this? You're taking me for my stretching? I'm gonna hurt him. I don't care what you say. I don't want to do this bull." And he's screaming about it. And he walks through the dressing room door and he stops and he looks at me and he gives me that look, right? And I'm in the corner. I'm like, "Sid, do you remember me by chance?" And he looks at me and goes, "Oh yeah, fruitcake." And then he starts laughing. And he goes, "Why didn't you tell me it was this guy from Winnipeg?" He goes, "I know this guy from a long time ago. We had supper together." And his whole demeanor changed. And he was literally, and he said later, he goes, "I was so mad." He goes, "Some guy coming in here thinking he could be a wrestling," and he goes, "I'm so glad it's you." So yeah, he had, again, you could almost see his joy in the bit that he does with me, because he's still laughing about it, like the fruitcake line, right? Like, for all I know, there's like 35 different fruitcakes around the world that he's called that, but maybe that was his thing.
That's not even a good insult now.
yeah, no kidding. Hey, yeah. Oh shit. Yeah. What do you say now? I wonder what he'd call me now. Listen, whipped cream with fruit. I don't know.
I think now that he's become a big proponent of pot, and pot is legal in Canada, I think he'd be much more mellow around you, because I've noticed. Yeah, he's like that.
Psycho Sid anymore. He's more sedated Sid. Yeah.
The match that I had with him, I remember he had smoked so much before. Like when I was picking him up off the ground, it was a shoot. He
Oh,
was so his energy was gone so much. I'm literally having to lift him up off the ground because he's in that relaxed state. He was quite happy to just stay lying down on the canvas. But if people want to watch those, they're on YouTube. All those little segments you did.
yeah, they are up there, and I think we actually had that. I don't even know where it is online, like if to get the entire episode at this point, but it's been played quite a few times. I got some good residuals off that.
Do you have a Sid impression?
No, I don't. I don't. Just in case he's around.
I just try to imagine him saying fruitcake because I can't picture it.
Well, it's more that, he always had that smile going on. Oh yeah, fruitcake, almost like a Randy Savage, but oh yeah, fruitcake. And he'd give you that look, but he just, to me, I think people were just scared of him. Like he didn't have to say anything. He was just an intimidating guy. And same thing with Taker. Like you've had experience with Taker, and I think he was a good guy outside of I think he tried to really play Undertaker everywhere he went.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. There was an incident with Taker. For me, it was another one of those where I'd met him and fooled around with the Undertaker voice or whatever at the time and joked because it was I think he was having a bit of a rivalry with Hogan at the time, and I think I did a Hogan for him or something like that. And he just kind of stoned, like another one of those. He walked in with having a bite to eat.
Yeah.
I did the impression, and he just kind of stared at me and then walked away, like whatever. So we're in the nightclub, and this might be hard to believe in a bar, but a fight broke out. So
especially in Winnipeg.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, depending on the area of the city, you may see teeth, you may not. We don't know. But so we're in this bar again. So I'm fortunate enough to be there. DiBiase's there and a few other guys, and having a couple sips with the boys. And Undertaker was he was sitting on his own. Like I just remember him, he just sort of sat on his own, and he had this, like draft glass of beer. And this, I don't know what was going on. There's a little melee going on behind me. So I'm like, I'm out of here, right? I'm getting out of the way. Because last thing you need is a media personality being involved in any kind of shenanigans, right, that happen in a bar. So as I'm walking past Taker, he grabs me. Like I'm not even paying attention to him, but all of a sudden just grabs me by the throat. And he's squeezing for just a second. And he looks at me and he goes, because he's going back to the Hogan impression, and he goes, "When you speak of the Undertaker, speak slow, run fast." So, and then he goes, "That was a good impression." And that, like, again, he broke character, gave me some character, said it was funny. And then he stood up. After that, he let me go. I thought he was going to choke slam me. So I had to go wipe my ass because I shit myself. And he went the other way, and there's a bit of a brawl going on. And he stood up and he threw the draft glass at the floor, and it was this big smash, and the brawl stopped, and they all stared at him at the end. The Undertaker standing there, and the fight stopped. Everybody just went their way. I'm like, now that's pretty cool. You got a believable character when you slam a glass and stare at everybody, and they just go, "Okay, we're going home now." So
yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I understand I'm supposed to ask you about royalties related to the CBC thing with WWE. There's some story there.
Oh, with the big check we get.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, just in case people are wondering, so my CBC show, once in a while you got to blow your own horn. It was one of the more popular ones to resell, obviously because of the WWE characters for sure, and it was a fun show. So when and people think, my God, Jerry Seinfeld and all these guys, they make hundreds of thousands of dollars off their residual checks. So CBC would call and say, just so you know, we've sold your show 4 more times, so it's going to air 4 more times, wherever it's going to air, and we're sending you a residual check, in the mail. And I'm like, Oh man, like car payment, here we come, we're getting some money. And just so people know, for 4 shows, 4 sells of a whopping show, I got $36. That's big time. I could have bought Sid some weed.
Well, that was in the mid 90s, so maybe that's closer to $50 now.
It could be by now, yeah. It's kind
I
of fun.
understand that being a comedian, it's very similar actually to being an independent wrestler. Like, you're not making a lot, you're traveling around, you're dealing with a lot of idiot fans,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and promoters will try and screw you.
Well, that's true. It's you do, especially before you get into so like I worked for Yuck Yucks. Once I established that, you know, but as a touring comic, as an independent, like you're saying, it's you're working for, you know, like just for example, you could call me and say, hey, you know what, I'm setting up you know, one of our shows here, and we need a Hogan impersonator for the intermission for the kids. Can you come on out and you know, I'll give you $100 for coming out for the night. And you're thinking, oh, hey, yeah, it's a great deal, $100. Meanwhile, you pocket 900, right? So that's how the independent circuit sort of can work. And you're right. You're just bar to bar to bar to bar. You never know what's going to happen most of the times. And to work into the clubs. But once you get to the Yuck Yuck side of things, or there, you know, any other company that you might work for, the bookings are pretty much all set, right? So there may be 2 or 3 levels of what you might get paid depending on the venues, but at least you know you're getting a payday once you're set with an organization like a Yuck Yucks, or in the States, wherever you want to go. The Improv used to have circuits. You know, those are good. Comedy clubs in Minneapolis used to have a couple different venues that they used to bring their guys in. So once you sort of get established out of the independent zone, you're doing okay.
The worst bouncing job I ever had was at a Yuck Yucks.
No way.
Because I noticed that I'm sure you don't have this problem, but a lot of comedians, they'll like make fun of people, but the moment people start to heckle them back, they'll want them thrown out. And there's nothing more that I hated than when a comedian riled someone up and then they want the guy thrown out because they can't take it back.
Yeah. The sad part about that is that, so for some unknown reason, people think it's acceptable to yell at the comic, but it's not acceptable for me to beat your ass down verbally, right? And if they do in a way that, like we always have as a stand-up comic, you have a certain, in your head, you know, like if I'm talking, let's say you're at the show, like in my head, I'm looking at this guy sitting in a chair. He's 6'5". He could probably twist my head off like a child cap on a pill bottle. I'm probably not going to rile him up, but I'm going to include you in my show where I insult you, but you don't get it yet, right? You're not going to know like that. But there are times where, yeah, you have to verbally give someone a good smack around, but they don't understand when the game's over, right? It's kind of like, I didn't get paid here to come have a verbal ping pong match with heckler A. They're not helping the show. They think they're being a part. Like, people will come up to you after the show and go, oh boy, wasn't that fun when I started talking to you for that half an hour? Oh yeah, you're a fucking riot, buddy. Right? Like, no, you're not helping the show. As a matter of fact, the guy who paid me to be here tonight is probably more pissed at you than I am, because he didn't get the show he paid for. You know, he got 30 minutes of me ripping you a new asshole. Like, so there's a little, like, I've had shows in bars where I'll go to the bouncer beforehand, and I'd come up to you and say, hey, Hannibal, do me a favor, man. If someone gets really nutty, I'll just nod at you. But, you know, and that's sort of yours, and I'll buy you a beer. Like, I'm one of those kind of guys. Like, just make a deal with the guy. Say, hey, listen, someone's getting stupid. You'll know if I sort of look at you like, get on him. Because it's fun for 2 or 3 times, and then these guys that maybe want the guy thrown out, like a comic knows he's starting to take away from the show that everyone else paid to see. So you have to really, that would be your only, I understand what you're saying. Like, you made this guy just got pissy that he's having a verbal match, but now the comic starts thinking of everybody else. That's sort of I could rationalize that. What club was that by chance?
The Yuck Yucks in Ottawa.
Oh fuck! No wonder they Howie used to run it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Howie Wagman, and Howie was fantastic. Like Howie ran a great ship, and I think you may be getting that. I don't know who the comic might have been, but Howie always he didn't like to me that controversy in his club. He'd rather you just do your show and do your thing. So you never know. Like that could have been a Howie
There
thing.
were some legitimate times. I'm not saying every time. Yeah. And some comedians have thinner skin than others.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, he had a horrible manager in charge. I ended up eventually quitting. That also had to do with it. But I opened for some wrestlers while I worked there too. Nice. So I got a little taste of it. Not many people, like I'm not a comedian by any stretch, but I got a taste of it. And I understand. I respect you guys for what you do.
It's tough. Like you think, and I can't imagine. See, this is an interesting thing that I think the times that we're in right now with what, WWE and AEW and any wrestling like that right now that's been on a mainstream, big audience, superstars. If you forgot where your grassroots were from, you've just learned what it's like to be back on the indie circuit by not performing to anybody. So, I'm not saying that any new age wrestlers have these attitudes where they think they should be in front of an audience, but maybe this has given them a good light to really be thankful for what they have out there. Because guys on the independent circuit, I'm sure you've been there, where guys are looking out the curtain going, there's only 8 people here. Shut up and get out there, right?
That's why I stopped doing independents other than Great North Wrestling, where I have control over it, because there's nothing more depressing than that.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, it's hard to work in front of 8 people. And mind you, I always say that a band has it pretty easy because you could kind of, if you got 10 people in the audience, you just kind of strum along, talk to yourselves, have fun, and have a fun session. And then you have, because a song is 3.5 minutes. So you do no matter what your set is, 20 minutes, it's still your songs. And then you have like wrestling where, if let's say there's 20 people in the audience, you can still go out there and put on a great match for them, right? You may not get the pops you're looking for, but it's still a match. 20 minutes is still 20 minutes of work no matter what. Right. But as a stand-up comic, if you've been on stage, 5 minutes is not 5 minutes like we're experiencing here. Like, and you get 20 people in the audience, just think, it's pretty easy to make 200 people laugh. But try to find, because laughter is contagious, right? So if you make 15 people laugh, you're probably going to get 25 of them laughing. Yeah. But it doesn't sound like that when you got an audience of 10 or 20 in a small bar and only 3 are laughing, right? So it's a tough.
At least you have the ability to get drunk.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the more I drink, the more people are. It looks like there's more of them out there. So it's all good.
Exactly. Whereas in wrestling, it happens from time to time on the indie scene, but generally it's frowned upon.
Well, listen, you got to keep in touch and let me know, and I'll come out wearing my Hollywood Hogan outfit next time.
Yeah. But I remember, actually, one of my best matches ever was in front of 25 people. The Hockey Talk Man was on that card.
Oh.
And we knew it was going to be a bad crowd. And I just remember Hockey Talk Man saying, send someone out to get a case of beer. And like, we ended up having a great event, but we were all fairly buzzed for our performances. But getting back to wrestling here, you worked with Jimmy Hart back in the Premier Championship Wrestling days.
I didn't.
No?
With Jimmy Hart? No,
yeah.
No, Jimmy Hart was no, he did come here, but the 2 times that Jimmy Hart was here, I was gone already from them. So I'd met Jimmy a couple times if they had like a World of Wheels promotion or something like that going on when I did the TV shows. But working with Jimmy never happened for that. But okay. I've heard nothing but good about Jimmy Hart.
Yeah, I know he doesn't do shoot interviews because he likes to stay away from controversy, but I've met him a couple of times.
Yeah.
He's still making WWE appearances. I think they used him a couple times last year.
Yeah. Well, I know he does a ton with Hogan's Beach Shop and Hogan's. So he's always doing appearances and signings over there too. So he's, I love seeing him.
I think he helps run it because I went and visited it once when I was in Clearwater, Florida, and the guy that was working there said, "You just missed Jimmy Hart. He came in here to do his daily counts or something." So he might have like a job related to that.
Well, if they're good buddies, I'm sure Hogan's taking care of him.
Now, you also, I'm sure American fans aren't going to know much about this, but City TV, you've been involved with them. They're a popular station here in Canada. They're all over Canada. What could you tell us a bit about your career with them?
Well, City TV was, I guess that was 8 years I was on that morning show, and I was the out and about guy. And like I mentioned earlier, that the best way to bring in my love of wrestling was to do a lot of pratfalls and things like that. So yeah, I was the out and about guy. Like if you had your wrestling promotion, for example, out here, I would say, "Hey, listen, Hannibal, why don't you set up the ring in the morning, and you got a show kind of for charity this weekend? Let's do a show." And of course you would kick the shit out of me throughout the show, which I'm sure you'd like, but and the audience loved it. So I was the guy promoting anything happening in the city. I was doing the best I can to local businesses or anything charity side of things. That would be what I would do. And I was fortunate enough to, speaking of honky tonk, we're talking about a honky tonk. I had this for my partner, my on-air partner. He never understood wrestling. He just one of those people that just, you people that don't understand wrestling. He just didn't get it. So if Honky was coming to town, and this happened on one occasion, so I would do shows from arts and crafts to World of Wheels to learning how to fly a plane. And this particular morning that Honky Tonk was in the city for one of the local shows, I was at a nail salon, and I said, the producer, one of the producers says, "Listen, we can't have the in-studio host interview Honky Tonk. It's not going to work. Like, he doesn't get it." So I said, "Okay, bring him to the nail salon." And so you got to be creative quickly when that happens, because a wrestler walks, it's like a joke. A wrestler walks into a nail salon, and like Honky walks in and he kind of looks around like, "What am I doing here? This isn't the studio." So I told him, I said, "Listen, I worked in wrestling. I worked here locally. This is what we're doing here, whatever we were doing for the nail salon at the time." So I said, "I have an idea." I said, in the back, like sort of in this back room area, they have, don't ask me why they had it there. They had like a workout machine, like one of those old workout machines. I said, "Why don't I just accidentally open the door and you're working out at the nail salon? This is your own private gym. This is the only one that could get you." And you got to be, and you know what? Wrestlers love off the cuff. They love it. So Honky was like, all right, no problem, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So sure enough, I'm on air and I'm like, "Well, let's see what's in this room where we're touring the nail salon." And I open the door and he's working out and he goes, "Handsome Jimmy." What? And he goes right into character. And I'm like, "Honky, what are you doing here?" He goes, "Well," he says, "I kind of broke a nail the other day and I came in." And, he just went off on whatever it was. And whenever he came back to the city, he would always ask for me to come and hang out. I actually went to Brandon to do a show with him when Brandon's 2 hours away from Winnipeg, sorry. But he made me come out there to be part of his manager as entourage, just because he loved working with me so much and having fun with it. So
he must have liked you if you got him to work out, because that's the first I've heard of him ever doing any type of exercise.
Well, I didn't say he got to 10. I just said I walked in and he was doing 1 or 2.
And Chris Jericho, I guess you interviewed him on that station as well.
Yeah, Chris, I was fortunate to have an entire morning with Chris, of course, from Winnipeg. In case anyone's just tuning in here and they're not realizing why I'm interviewing him, but he's from Winnipeg and he has a favorite restaurant out here, or he did, and they made a pizza, in his name kind of thing. So then again, we did a show. Now, how do you bring a wrestler to do a show an entire 2.5 hours in the morning at a pizza place? Well, we make fucking pizza. That's what we do. So, but of course, Jericho, he's a master already at promos and doing and off the cuff. So we I don't know what we did we obviously made his pizza, but yeah, he had fun with it. And of course, if he was the heel at the time, I think this is where I'll say if I had any magic with the wrestlers, I get it. I understand character. So if Jericho was a heel, that was what he had to be that morning. And I played that with him. I said, you make fun of me, you make fun of whatever you want. And he was like, well, I don't know. I didn't know he was like, no other stations do that. I'm like, I'm not any other station. Don't forget, you're talking to a guy. I get the business. I understand it. So I will play your character the entire morning if that's what you want to do. And it almost makes, it was the same thing with Honky, playing the Elvis route with him. I'm like, oh, your voice sounds familiar. I'm sure there some other guy who thought he was, and they like that because you're playing to their character. So Jericho we had a blast that morning, having a ton of fun. And of course, he's a fun person to begin with.
Is there a Jericho impression yet?
No, I've sort of given up on some, that's the other thing. To me, Jericho is not, he doesn't have anything to do an impression with. And what I mean by that is he's not a distinguishable voice. I don't necessarily, have any kind of look to a Jericho. So I always took guys who had some character to them to do their impressions or their voices if I did them. But I think that's missing in wrestling today. Speaking of that, is character.
Oh yeah, that's the main thing. One of the main things that is missing from wrestling. And Eric Bischoff, I guess you had an interaction with him as well.
Eric Bischoff, this is another one that the producer said, we have Eric Bischoff coming to town. Now, don't forget, I'm the TV guy who's out promoting. I'm never really at the studio. So they said Eric Bischoff is in the studio, and once again, we don't want the host who's in the studio to interview him because he doesn't get it. Like, he doesn't know who Eric Bischoff is, first of all, and I do. So we made arrangements with whatever organization I was doing a show with that I'd have to leave early that particular day and go back to the studio to be with Eric Bischoff. So they had to push Bischoff's interview, right? So when I got there, I start yakking with him, and I said, and again, here's another one, right? Super good guy. Like, again, someone may have had bad interaction with Eric Bischoff. I'm not saying that no one ever has. To me, at first he's somewhat standoffish. And then once you explain that you've been in the business, you've done a couple things. Yeah, I'm not a real superstar, but I've done enough local wrestling. I know how to take bumps. I know your character. And I asked him, I go, how do you want the interview to go? And he says, well, how do you want it to go? I said, that's not my question. You are Eric Bischoff. I will play the interview like you are Eric Bischoff. Or do you want to play, I'm Eric Bischoff, the author now, because it was his book. And he said, well, if that's the case, why did you bump me? Right? And he's looking at his watch. And I'm like, at that moment, I knew where he wanted to go. So again, we do these little bumpers and that was the big thing. So he was on camera looking at his watch, pointing at his watch, how dare you make Eric Bischoff wait? So before we got to the interview, anyone who didn't know who Eric Bischoff was, seeing that 10-second clip, knew he was an asshole. And that's what we wanted, right? I mean, he's not off camera. So when we did the interview, I interviewed him as Eric Bischoff. And afterwards, because a lot of this thought he was pretty standoffish and thinking, oh, this guy's a jerk and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, man, he's awesome. And after the interview, his demeanor changed as soon as we went off air. And he signed autographs for people and chatted just like you and I are chatting. So I just thought, to me, that's the best way that even today's media, they don't get it. I don't think they understand how to interview a wrestler. They wait for the wrestler to have a script. They hold the microphone, blah, 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 and they're gone. And there's no character to it, right? Like you can't establish characters anymore. Like, to me, that's the best part. Like, everyone says, oh, I saw that interview you did with Bischoff. What a dick. Nah, as long as you believe he was, we won the game.
And of course, Kenny Omega, he's one of the executives in AEW. You interviewed him. He's another Winnipegger. How did that go?
Well, Kenny was I'll say he was he was pretty green back then. So he was just, I'm trying to think the promotion. It must have been PCW at the time we interviewed him with. Again, he was a good guy. He had a good interview. I think he hit me a couple times, gave me a couple chops, and you know what? We put him over for his show. But again, with Kenny, it wasn't like I had an opportunity to sit down with you for this time period. We got 2.5 minutes to do a quick interview with Kenny, establish his character on air. Is he face? Is he heel? He chops me a couple times. Of course, he's baby face to the fans who hate me. It's
Did
perfect.
you get the answer to the question, is he bisexual or not? That's what everyone wants to know these days.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I heard that right. Did you say polar?
No,
I think
I think he's come out about it, but I've had a lot of fans ask me to get to the bottom of that.
That's going to be an interview for you.
Yeah, he might be out of my price range these days. He's very successful.
Well, listen, you've saved a good $3 on me, so that's 3 towards that.
And of course, Virgil's another guy. I tried to get an interview with Virgil, and he turned me down, surprisingly. So, what was your experience with him?
Okay, so I know where we're going to go here. I already know that. I think he has a bad reputation, from what I understand. Now, again, I'm a stand-up comic. I'm a TV guy. I like the business. So every story I'm telling you today is a good experience. So hang on. We're doing a show at World of Wheels. The promoter of World of Wheels says, we got so-and-so from Dukes of Hazzard. We have so-and-so from whatever show to do an interview tomorrow at the World of Wheels. And he goes, and I'll never forget, and he's all excited. He goes, and Jimmy, get this. We're going to have a WWE superstar for you. I'm like, wow, who is it? He goes, Virgil. I'm like, okay, let's just do with the Dukes of Hazzard guy and let's whatever. Because I'm thinking it's Virgil, right? Like, the guy made what, maybe $100,000 and when he wrestled, like he wasn't a big star.
Supposedly in WCW, I think he made about $150,000 from the recent pay list I read. So he did pretty well. I forget his name in WCW, but Vincent. And then something, they put him with the West Texas Rednecks. Curly Bill. He was Curly Bill with the West Texas Rednecks.
Man, if there's anything I learned from the West Texas Rednecks, it's that rap is crap. Do you remember that song?
Oh yeah, I love the West Texas Rednecks.
Yeah, well, Kurt Hennig singing that killed me, man.
So anyway, sorry to digress.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's good. So Virgil now. I said, okay, you know what? I love wrestling. I love promoting the guys where I can. Let's bring Virgil in, and so he gets there in the morning. Super friendly guy. My camera guy, absolutely, he's just cracking up because he loved Virgil. Like, he loved Virgil with $1 Million Man days, obviously. So he's just chatting with him, having a good time. Off air, you sort of establish what you're going to get away with when you're on air. Now, I'm not saying that every interview has gone as planned when we have something to do with Virgil. So I say to Virgil, your first interview up here, 7 a.m, we do a tease. So it's like a 30-second quick tease of the segment coming up. I said, Virgil, why don't you just, once I start talking, hey, we're at World of Wheels, why don't you just come in and pretend like we're buddies from way back? And he's like, okay. So sure enough, I'm like, hey, today we're at World of Wheels, and we got some great guests coming out from the Dukes of Hazzard. And then all of a sudden, Virgil busts in. And I'm like, hey, Virgil. And he plays right into it, right? Oh, good to see you, Jimmy, this, that, and the other thing. I said, well, Virgil, we're going to talk to you in the first segment coming up, and you're going to explain why you're here. And he says to me, he goes, well, why am I here? He goes, we're standing by my Lamborghini. And I'm like, that's not your Lamborghini. And he looks at me, goes, what? A black man can't own a Lamborghini? And I'm like, okay, we'll see in a few minutes. Because you don't want to get into, like, my sense of humor is probably like you and Virgil and the guys, like, addressing your sense of humor, right? I am not getting into this conversation with Virgil. And I'll still remember when we got back to the studio, we rewatched that particular segment, and my camera guys, the camera was shaking because he was laughing so hard with Virgil, but he was like a fantastic interview. And I found out later, now I don't know how I'm going to blow on anything here, but like he didn't, for that particular World of Wheels, he just showed up. He didn't take any pay. Like, you obviously have to pay stars to be there. And this promoter said it was interesting. He got a phone call because he was booked solid for guests for World of Wheels. And Virgil just said, I'll just work for my photos, like for the photo ops. You just give me a table. And that's what they did in Winnipeg. And Winnipeg, of course, loves coupons and everything free. So they took Virgil. But he was great. And at the time, I guess he did have a bit of a lineup. I understand things might have changed since then.
Interesting. And what are you doing these days? You're still doing comedy. Are you still wrestling at all?
Well, you know what? I think, no. The comedy, yes, still doing some comedy. I do a lot of corporate is what I do, nothing in clubs. We do game show situations like a fabulous feud. I can't use the other term. So I host that or do stand-up. Wrestling, I've been asked a few times to get back involved because I'm a pretty good mouthpiece for a wrestler who doesn't have that capability. I'm sure Danny Warren, right? So
yes.
Danny's a great guy. Danny Duggan's a great guy.
Both he owns CWE Canada, for anyone who doesn't know that. They're a touring promotion. Unfortunately, I know their recent tour was canceled due to the lockdown, but they run like 30-day tours. Yeah,
and he brings in some good names too. Like he'll bring in I think he had again, that's a story for him, but I think he had some trouble with a specific I don't want to say the guy's name, but it rhymes with Brutus Beefcake. And and then PCW too has I've had some talks back with them again to go back to where
do you have any jokes about the time that Brutus Beefcake was caught with cocaine in the Boston subway and they thought it was anthrax? And there was a big story because it was thought up to be an anthrax scare, but in reality it was Brutus's cocaine.
I honestly, I'll tell you what, like I said, I think we were off camera by then. But I was on the treadmill today and I was watching that episode where you talked about that. That's the first time I'd heard about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's funny you're bringing that up because I just heard you on your latest episode that you were about the cocaine incident.
I like Brutus that he would probably fit in well in Winnipeg because he still wears the big pirate earring. And it seems like that would be in style there.
If he's going and Transcona, if he's going anywhere in Transcona, that's the place. Actually, in Winnipeg, if you go to Transcona, they the bars out there, I know they had bouncers and everything, but that was the first time, that's an area where you would get checked for weapons on the way in the door. And I remember saying to the guy, what do you mean, do I have any weapons? He goes, well, you're going to need one. Pick one from the drawer. So they were just making sure we had something when we walked in. That's Transcona.
All right. Well, I just thought I'd remind everyone of that Brutus incident for Danny's sake, because I know he kind of screwed them over in a certain way.
Yeah. Without, again, I don't know full details, but I heard the final show. I guess he had toured the smaller venues perhaps, and then when it got to, I think it was Thunder Bay was their final destination, where they sold big tickets in Thunder Bay, and that's where Brutus decided to pull the pin for whatever reason. Again, that's between management and the talent, but I thought that was quite disappointing too, because you hate hearing that, right? Like, you're an independent worker and you've just gone through 16 little rinky-dink towns and you're looking forward to the big payday crowd, and your star is not coming. Like that.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah, well, I won't even tell some of the funniest stories I have about Brutus because they're not even appropriate for YouTube. So I understand you think you might be good as a writer in the professional wrestling domain in the future.
Well, I'm gonna have to talk to that fucking guy of mine. I look, you see, now I'm looking at you and you're laughing about this because this question just coming up. He's not saying a word that is not on a list, but I think I would like to. I would love to write scripts. I like writing scripts and storylines. I think that if I was to help an organization write, I would really bring what you and I like the best back to it. And that is massive character, not character development, but character. You can be a character, but without your character, you're lost. Like, there's so many things that I like, guys that I look at, like if I was like Mean Gene days, right? You gotta know that Mean Gene, without Mean Gene, some of these wrestlers would never have been sold because he was that good at making them that, right? And I think, I'm going to give away a job I might have, but I think if you have the capability as an announcer, you should study some of the old tapes, if they still have tape, and go, holy crap, like, we have concentrated so heavy on promos, right? We've lost promoting the character of that. So even today, like, I understand you want the pretty face as your interviewer because for some reason they think that, yeah, we all want to look at the girl. And honestly, if you're a wrestling fan, you probably don't care about the interviewer. And if you don't know who an interviewer is, they're doing their job. That's how I look at it in wrestling. So if I'm wrestling you, I have to sell you. Like, I can't just sit there and go, Hannibal, great match. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, bring something into it, right? I love the Mean Genes, right? I love those characters. Even Ventura. Like, we talk about Ventura, Gorilla Monsoon. Like, they played off each other. They knew how to do what they had to do to get whoever over. So, I mean, I don't know your particular wrestling character. If you're a heel, if you're a face, maybe at the time, I would come in and say, Hannibal, quite the match, but did you have to bite him? Right? You bring something from the previous match you may have had to start your character in. Like, I just think they need a lead off. There's no leads anymore to establish the character. Or if, like, for example, like Bob Uecker, when Andre put his, right, you need those guys to, like, you can say, oh yeah, Andre the Giant, he's a big guy. But I'm sure him with Uecker probably said, feel free to choke me or do something silly, right? They obviously have to talk. But how do I know Andre is that big if I'm just tuning in? The only way to have that established that he is a giant is to show the size of his hand around a regular guy's throat. So to me, that, even though it's a funny thing where he's choking him, I'm like, holy shit. Like, you see his paws, right? He's big. So again, if I know your character and I know what you did the last match, or you're going out to do that you might have had issues or heat with, I'm going to bring that into your interview, which I don't think they do anymore. And I would write that in those scripts.
Well, those are some good points. I agree with them. You do realize that you can go to WWE corporate and apply to be a writer. You actually probably have enough qualifications to be considered for it.
Well, you know what? Can I use you as a reference?
Sure. That might be a bad thing, though. They don't like me there.
No. You'd be a good reference. Listen, this guy's got more hits than you guys.
That is true. More people are watching the Hannibal TV this month, anyways, than are watching Raw. So
Well,
I
that'll
am bragging about that. Sorry, but I like to brag. Wrestlers are not known for being humble.
no. That's why. See what I did though? I brought that into the conversation for you to push.
Yeah, there you go. And do you have a Stu Hart impression?
No, I never met Stu Hart. I mean, if you're doing no, you worked under there. What about you? Do you have a Stu Hart impression?
No, not one that I'll be comfortable saying on camera, anyways. But I'm not known for my impressions.
No, but you did
Anyone
stand up.
else? Pardon me?
You did stand up, you said.
I did stand up, but yeah, that was for opening for a couple wrestlers, and I'm good at insulting people.
You're in. Actually, you probably, even today's comedy, though, a lot of comics, I think, are starting to get worried because now with, of course, this COVID scare, comedy clubs are closed. How do you social distance? If you come back to the comedy clubs, you're going back to playing to like 20, 30 people maybe. And of course, with today's touchiness, you can't say anything. All these social justice warriors are out for you say something wrong. Look like Lawler got in trouble recently.
Oh, that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
That was absolutely ridiculous.
I totally agree. Like it's Jerry Lawler. Like, again, people just look for, like, they have a pot of shit and they just want to stir it. And if you know Lawler, there's nothing. It's like the Don Cherry thing. I still disagree with that. I've been with Don Cherry. He's a personal friend of mine. We were in Afghanistan together. We toured Afghanistan. I don't know if you knew this story, but we over Christmas in 2010, we performed. I performed, and then I was sort of his Ron McLean while he was out there without the backstab. But he every time, like those they love him, and it didn't matter who was part of that regiment. And there's male and there's female and there's people of all color in the military. And I'll never forget this. Every time Don Cherry signed off to the troops, he would always start something like, "I got to tell you right now, you people are the greatest people in this world." Like you people's everybody. So again, one phrase left to the right, you're not in the social justice warrior thing, right? But he's, again, I'll stand up for him anytime.
So what are your goals now for the future? You just want to keep doing what you're doing, maybe apply to be a WWE writer,
Yeah,
do
maybe
these corporate events.
might be my speed. I think if well, again, you're comparing apples to apples, but I think that there's so many. I don't know about you, but I think there's so many young, great upcoming talent in AEW that they might need a mouthpiece. Someone might need a mouthpiece or a manager role. I'd love to get back into that side of things. I'd also like to get back to like what you and I sort of talked about, where I could be there or in a situation where, yeah, we have whatever, for lack of term, like, Max Corner, and we bring the guys in like old school days where, you'd have the set, you do a quick interview and you're gone with the guys. But I think you really need somebody to understand. Some of these new guys, to me, they just don't have the promo. You can go out there and be, like you said earlier, 5'6", 102 pounds, high flying. But when it comes to a promo, who wants to watch you? You just need someone to sell them a little better. And I think I would like to do that again.
Well, I did hear that Tony Khan had said before all this lockdown stuff happened that Winnipeg and Toronto and BC were on their list originally for 2020 tapings, but obviously that's all going to be delayed now. Maybe in 2021, if they come to town, you can make your way backstage somehow and pitch some of the executives.
What's interesting is you talked about them doing shows here. The minute that came out, the minute that rumbling came out, we had, all of a sudden, we had, Raw's coming to Winnipeg in February now. So I think somewhere, again, sneaky business, right? WWE got wind, and all of a sudden we had a Raw taping. So they're almost trying to say if we don't stick to going to Winnipeg, AEW is going to steal it. And I think that's, like, you know that as well as I do. Toronto gets some big cards, and I understand Winnipeg's kind of in that weird spot where it's not an easy travel destination, so you might not want to bring a Raw or a SmackDown all the time. But wrestling, as you mentioned, Winnipeg supports wrestling 1,000%.
Oh yeah, and with Jericho involved, it's a guaranteed sellout.
You're right, and Omega for sure.
Yeah, for the first time, anyways, it's going to be sold out.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Where can people follow you on social media? We know you shut down your Twitter.
Yeah, I actually did shut her down. I'm not really. I'm trying to stay away from that in a sense for a little while. Again, I get very, for lack of a better term, I get aggravated at the social justice things for silly, for stupidity's sake. So I just I avoided it for a little while, and there might be a reason for that down the road for my future plan here. But I am working on a brand new 1-hour show for myself. So that's where the next social media might pop up.
So we've heard your Macho Man impression. That's by far what you're known for. Any others you want to share with us before we close this off?
That's it. I'm just happy being Jimmy Mack, saying thank you to the Hannibal TV for having me on.
Well, you've got to develop a Lanny Poffo one if you're going to do a Macho Man.
You know what? Okay, I'll tell you what. If you guarantee me another interview down the road and we'll just talk some wrestling, then what can we do and what can we write for these new guys or what we think is going to happen? I will come on with a genius outfit.
Oh, that would be cool. I actually have a good Lanny Poffo one, but I'm only going to tease people that I have it. Okay. I could do Lanny Poffo pretty well, but I already have enough heat with him. I don't want to stir the pot starting to do impressions of him. Although I can't obviously do an impression of the thing he's most known for. Oh, yeah. I'm not that flexible.
Listen, right now you're on YouTube. All you got to do is just, nod your head further. How would we know?
Good point. And to close this off, if Macho Man was going to have a match with Hannibal, what would he tell me?
He would probably say something like, "Well, listen here, Hannibal. I'm coming at you. Yeah. A long time ago, we had something called the Mega Powers. Yeah. I'm going to reunite the powers. I'm going to take you down. 1, 2, 3. Dig it!"
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.